Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by Tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at using Adobe Illustrator CS4 to draw this nice box icon. Now I've sort of set it in its own little 3D world here, which is really just a simple gradient background and a little reflection and shadow, which is really what we're going to create. But this is a box icon that can be used really as an icon, as some sort of a little graphical element in some piece of artwork you're working on. It can be used as a favicon. It can be used as a desktop icon. Whatever you want to do with it. You can fill this box with anything because the way it's set up, you can put stuff inside of it and really make it look like it's inside of there. Matter of fact, I have this glow sitting right here inside of it. You can see if I delete that, look at that, it goes away and we've got an empty box. But right now there's a glow sitting inside of it, so it's very versatile what we can do with this box. So let's get started. We're going to come up here to File, New. And we're going to create a 600 by 400 document just because that's kind of what's default. Also, if you have an advanced section open here, just choose RGB color mode, and we're going to hit OK. Here we are with a new document. All right, first thing we need to do, we're going to get right to work. We're going to get rid of our stroke. So select the stroke in the toolbar and just hit the backslash key. That crosses out the stroke, gets rid of that for us. And I'm going to select the foreground color. I'm just going to select like a medium gray from my swatches panel. So like that gray right there is fine. Next, grab the rectangle tool and just click once. We're going to create a new rectangle, 125 by 125. There we go. Next up, go Effect, 3D, Extrude and Bevel. Now here in the Extrude Bevel dialog box, we want to make sure we check Preview on. If you've got a computer that can handle it, I highly suggest you check it on. If not, just preview every once in a while. What I'm basically going to do is rotate this box until it looks the way I want it to look. I'm actually going to change the extrude depth here because this is nowhere near deep enough. It doesn't look like a box. It looks, I don't know what it looks like. It looks like a very fat CD case. Not particularly the effect I'm going for. So we're going to widen it up. Remembering that we created this box 125 by 125, so I'm going to set the extrude depth. Let's try 125. And hey, look at that. It looks pretty good. I'm going to tip this box a little more toward me. Maybe not quite that much. And I'm going to kind of rotate it over and lift it up a little bit. I really want to get the perspective like I'm just sort of looking at this box and it's hanging out on the ground doing its box thing. And we're just kind of looking at it and admiring this box. All right. The next thing that you really want to do is choose more options here in the 3D Extrude and Bevel options dialog box and check on Draw Hidden Faces. This is going to be very important later on. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can see, there we go. We have our nice gray box, the foundation of our nice brown box. Before we go any further, however, I want to grab my Symbols panel and just drag it out here. Now, if you don't have your Symbols panel open, go Window. And when my window panel shows up, there we go. Symbols is right down here. Note the hotkey, Shift Control F11. I virtually never use the hotkey because I usually have the Symbols panel open already. But for those of you that really like hotkeys, there you go. And I choose the flyout menu. It's the little sort of menu button in the top right corner, just beneath the close button. And we're going to come down here to Open Symbol Library. And up here at the top, the list goes way off screen, by the way. Up here at the top, we've got 3D symbols and arrows. I want the arrows symbols. And basically, this symbols dialog box right here is pretty much like your current symbols, the symbols that are almost active. Not quite, but you can think of them as your active symbols. And over here, these are just like a backup library, sitting back on your hard drive, hanging out kind of symbols. However, when you select a symbol from the hanging out symbols, it moves to your active symbols, so you can use them. So I'm going to choose this arrow right here, and notice it pops right over to my usable symbols dialog. Now you can use the symbols right out of here too. I can just click and drag one of these and drop it right on my artboard. I, however, don't want to do that. And you can see what it did. It placed it right there on my symbols dialog. I'm just going to right click on it, select it, excuse me, and hit the delete symbol key. Delete that selected symbol, sure thing. Go ahead. Notice it doesn't delete it from my actual library over here, but that's enough on arrows and symbols. Now that we have it over here, we can use it. So I'm going to drag this guy back into this little bunch of panels, and I can, just basically ignore him. I'm going to select this box now, and I'm going to double click to open my Appearance panel here. You can see I've got the Appearance tab. Double click to open that guy up. There we go. And the Appearance panel basically shows a list of the visual effects, the visual attributes of the object that is selected. In this case, we can see there's no stroke, there is a fill, the opacity is still at 100%, but there also is this 3D extrude and bevel effect. So we're going to double click that, And you can see it looks like it undid what we just did, but it didn't. We just had preview checked off. We're going to select fewer options. Now, the important thing here is map art. So we're going to choose map art. And you can see you can choose a symbol. Now, before we go any further, I just want to point something out. When you're mapping artwork, the face of the 3D object that you're mapping to is outlined in red. You can see, there we go, we got the red outline. Now, that only happens, okay, here with preview. Actually, I think it does happen, yes, when you don't choose preview, but it's very hard to see. So I'm going to keep preview on so I can really tell what I'm doing. And here we go. This is our first face. We do want to apply artwork to this front face. So I'm going to choose symbol. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Arrow. There we go. I'm keeping an eye on the arrow there. I'm going to hold down my shift key and click outside of this, anchor point, just like we would rotate an object. I'm going to rotate it until he's going straight up. I'm going to hold down my shift and alt keys. That would be shift and option on the Mac. Click and drag to make the arrow much bigger, like so. Next, I'm going to find this front face. This is a rear face that we've got selected. And the other rear face, the bottom. And here's the other front face. So I'm going to scroll all the way down, grab arrow 26 there. And you can see it looks like it's pointing to the side in the map art dialog. But we really want it to be pointing down, really. So I'm just going to hold shift, rotate this guy around. You can see he's pointing down. And shift and alt, shift and option on the Mac. To make that arrow a bit bigger, we're going to size him down just a tad bit. There we go. And just ignore the fact that he looks like he's on an angle. Hit OK. You can see it is, in fact, straight up and down. Just a little page or a display refresh glitch there in the map art dialog box. I'm going to collapse my appearance panel. Now that we have our arrows mapped to the side of the 3D artwork, we have no need to keep this as live 3D artwork. So what I'm going to do is go Object, Expand Appearance. We now have a series of shapes. However, I want these to be broken apart, so I'm going to go Object, Ungroup. And if we open up layer 1 by clicking that little arrow, you can see we've got a bunch of smaller groups. One is the top, this one's that side, that one's that side, we've got the back sides, we've got the bottom. Alright, the only side that we want to get rid of is the top. The bottom we're going to save because we're going to use that later for a shadow. So I'm going to select the top and just hit delete. And you can see now we can look right through and see those back sides of the 3D object. This is why it was so important earlier on to draw those hidden faces. Because really, as long as the top's there, those two back walls of the box cannot be seen. Now that we've gotten rid of the top and we really want this box to look three-dimensional, like we can put something in it or have something coming out of it, we need those back walls. We don't want to have to take these front walls and flip them and invert them and place them behind and do all of that I can't even call it fancy stuff, that, not the way it's supposed to be done stuff. You can do it that way, it takes a lot more time. So one last thing we need to do before we start coloring this box is we need to select these front faces and ungroup them one more time. These other box groups, they can stay within their groups. I don't really care about them because that's just the path. I can select that and edit the color just like that. No big deal. However, these groups, you can see, gives me a question mark at the fill. That's going to be a problem because, see, the arrow is a different fill color than the actual side of the box. So what I need to do is ungroup this so I can just color the side of the box and leave the arrow the color it is. We're going to take care of the arrow stuff later. So the hotkey for ungrouping is Control-Shift-G. That would be Command-Shift-G on the Mac. So voila, ungroup that guy, and Command-Shift or Control-Shift-G for that side. We have just ungrouped them. Now we're going to begin playing with some gradients to color the sides of these boxes to make them look more like box sides. We don't really have charcoal boxes here where I'm from, so we're going to make it more like a standard cardboard box. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come over here to the gradient panel and just select the black-white gradient. Now I have this side selected, black-white gradient. There we go. It applies the black-white gradient to the box. The box looks arguably worse. Don't panic. We're going to edit the gradient. What we're going to do is we're going to take a light gray, like this gray here, drag it and drop it on top of the white down in the gradient. Wow, look at that. Now it's starting to look a little better. We're going to take a darker tan and drop it over the black. And it's not quite dark enough, so I'm going to grab one that's a little darker. There we go, just like that. Wonderful. Next, I'm going to grab the gradient tool, and I'm going to draw from the top right corner down to the bottom left, like so. You can see we've got our dark cardboard color down there, and it gets lighter up here. So now, what we can do is select the other side of our box, and instead of going through that whole same, that same old song and dance where we, edit the gradient and all of that stuff, I can just hit the I key. Grabs my eyedropper tool, select that side of the box, and look at that, we have our gradient. I can just grab the gradient tool, start from the top left corner now, and go to the bottom right corner, and we have our lights coming up to this top corner, and the two dark corners are the bottom corners that, are down and away. Now, for the back sides of the box, the general rule I like to follow is you eye drop the box face parallel to that box. So for this box face over here on the left-hand side, we want to eye drop this box face with the up arrow on it. So I'm going to select it, hit the I key, eye drop that face of the box, hit V to grab my selection tool, select the other face of the box, hit I again to grab the eyedropper tool, and select the arrow facing down, that side of the box. And you can see, there we go. I might want to come in here and just use my gradient tool, start from the bottom corner here and work to the top left corner like so. There we go. We have our darks in the back there. So it really is making this really look three-dimensional at this point. Very nice. So far, I love what we've got. The next thing I want to do is just apply an inner glow to both front faces of the box. So I'm going to select this face to start us off. Go Effect, Stylize, Inner Glow. The mode will be normal. We're going to hit preview, and actually we're going to change the mode in a minute, but I'm going to keep it at normal for now. The blur, let's try something like 12. That's pretty good. The opacity we're going to reduce to about 15, like so, and the mode we're going to change to overlay. The overlay mode is essentially going to make this inner glow disappear on the darker parts of our cardboard. It's not going to totally make it disappear, it's just going to make it a little harder to see. So overlay, and you can see it makes it a little harder to see down there, but up here it's virtually unaffected. So I'm going to hit OK, and we now have that inner glow on that side of the box. Now for this side of the box, I'm just going to select it and go Effect, Apply Inner Glow. When you use the Apply X effect right here at the top of the Effect menu, it applies that effect. You can see here I have Inner Glow too, but Apply Inner Glow, it's going to apply that effect with the same exact settings that I just used. Whereas if I chose Inner Glow right here, it would just give me the dialog box and allow me to do whatever custom settings I want. I don't want to waste all that time like I've just wasted explaining it to you, although I wouldn't say I wasted that time. But instead of spending all of that time, you can just hit Apply Inner Glow, and we have the same exact inner glow right there on that side. Great. Look at how much better that looks. So next up with the box, we want to select these arrows and make them look like they're really on the side of the box. So I'm going to select this arrow to get us started. Note, my fill is still a question mark. Don't panic. We're not going to ungroup this. We're going to come in here and just select the group. You can see there's a clipping path, and that's what's throwing our little color picker all out of whack. So just select group, and you can do that by just choosing the little circle there in the layers panel. There we go. I'm going to fill this guy with solid black, and I'm going to do the same with the other group. Open it up and select group. Fill it with black, and then I'm going to come to the transparency panel and reduce the transparency to, I don't know, let's try 15. That looks pretty good. I think we'll stick with 15, and I'm going to close that group up, select this group right here, set this guy to 15 as well. There we go. Lovely. I love it. Looks like it's actually on the side of the box now. The next thing that I want to do is somehow accentuate the edge of this box, the corner and the two top edges, to give it a little bit more depth, to really make it look three-dimensional, really help it, just that little extra bit to make it pop a little more. Beside giving it a shadow and reflection, we're going to accent these edges. So how do I like to do that? Well, I'm going to grab the zoom tool first off and just zoom in on this box. Really nice and tight like this. I'm going to grab the line tool now, right here. Line tool right next to the rectangle tool. If you have your tools stacked like I do, you may have them tall and thin like this, in which case it's right on top of the rectangle tool. So what I want to do next is just swap my fill and stroke colors. I want to just make sure my stroke is black. We can change the stroke in just a minute, but stroke, you want to have a color. Fill, you want to have nothing. I'm going to start from this top corner right here, the corner in between the two arrows, coming right up from the bottom. I'm going to start at the top corner, and I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out, and I'm going to go down. I'm going to show you exactly why I'm going to do that in just a second. So I'm just going to click around the edge, and right there, I'm going to pull out, and I'm going to pull it beyond the edge. Pull it beyond the edge. Don't worry about going too far. We're going to use a mask in a minute to contain this and actually fade it as well. So we want to start from this corner and pull out, like so. Next, we're going to start right there, pull straight down, and I'm going to hold the Shift key to just make sure I'm pulling it straight down, just like that. Now, I have all three of these paths over here on my Layers panel. I'm going to Control-click the circle to the right of them, just like that. There we go. I've got all three selected. I'm going to hit Command or Control-G to group them. And I want to come to the Stroke dialog box and reduce the weight to a half point, just like so. And I'm going to change the stroke color to a very light, buttery yellow, like that. You can see it really makes that edge pop. That is too much, however, so let's get our masking going. We're going to select that group. That's that group right there at the top of our layers panel. It's all 3 strokes. I'm going to go over my transparency panel, double-clicked in the open area next to the thumbnail to create a mask. There we go. We can leave clip checked on. I'm going to grab my ellipse tool. I'm going to just draw sort of an ellipse, maybe like that. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. Make it come up a little more that way and come up a little that way. I'm going to swap the fill and the stroke. You can see our line has suddenly reappeared. Now, the problem I'm having is it's very hard-edged. So really what I need to do is come here to my gradient panel, give it a black to white gradient, and set that gradient to radial. See, type, linear, radial. We want radial, and we're going to make the white a bit stronger. There we go. It fades out very nicely at the edges now. You can actually move that over just a tad. And there we go. Now I'm going to come to transparency. I'm actually going to deselect the mask, and really to deselect the mask and get back to regular editing mode, because right now you can see we're in opacity mask editing mode. Look at the layers panel. We only have our mask. Don't panic. Just simply select that thumbnail to the left in the transparency panel. We're back to regular editing mode. Notice our layers panel repopulates. I'm going to deselect this whole mess, and that looks pretty good. I may want to select it and reduce the opacity a little bit. I'll take it down to maybe, I don't know, 90. And there we go. We've got a nice accentuated edge on our box. Zoom back out, and very nice. I, however, am going to stay zoomed in so I can really see what I'm doing for the next step. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and I'm going to get rid of a stroke, and I'm going to give it a black fill. So I'm just going to select the fill, and over my swatches panel, hit black. I'm going to now draw a really flat oval underneath this guy. I'm using my space bar to position it, and I'm going to position him kind of like that. Okay, just coming a little more off of the right-hand edge than the left. And I'm going to go Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I don't think I want 15, maybe an 8 or 9. Let's go with 9, see what that looks like. Hit OK, and that looks very nice. Note the problem is our shadow is on top of our box. That does not look realistic at all. Hit Command or Control X to cut it, and Command or Control B to just paste it behind everything. There we go. Lovely. I'm going to select it, reduce the opacity to maybe, let's try 70. Now this may look a little strong on the white background, but I'm just thinking ahead and remembering that I'm going to place this box on a dark background. When you place something on a dark background, it gets a little harder to see things like shadows and a little easier to see things like glows. So with your shadows, you want to make them a little stronger, and your glows, you just want to make them a little weaker. So it's just something we're keeping in mind here as we work with this box, is bearing in mind what type of background we have in mind. Okay, so on to the next step. Now that we've created the shadow, we can throw a reflection at the bottom of this. We can throw our glow into it. But before we put the glow in, before we put the reflection down, before we put the harder shadow down, we need to put a background behind our box. How do we do that? It's very, very easy. You can see here, I have the second layer. I'm actually going to delete it and show you exactly what I did. I'm going to create a new layer, hit the new layer button, just drag that below layer 1. This new layer is just a completely blank layer. Obviously, we just created it. All of the rest of our box is contained within layer 1. It's a bunch of subgroups and paths and maybe a layer or 2 in there, but it's all within layer 1. Layer 2 is its own, it could be its own world for all we're concerned with. Now the first thing I'm going to do is select this box here on layer 1, and I'm just going to drag it down and place it somewhere down around the bottom right, like so. Next, I'm going to lock it. So I'm going to hit the blank square between the eyeball and the layer thumbnail. There we go. Now I can't select it. I can't mess it up, if I wanted to. So I'm going to come back to layer 2. I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm going to click anywhere. Now here's where I think, okay, how big did I make this document? Well, let's see. I believe we made it 600 by 400. So let's say 600 by 400. Hit OK. We have our rectangle. Very nice. We're going to go Window Align to bring up the Align panel. And here in the Align panel, we're just going to align it to the left of the artboard. By the way, I have Align to Artboard selected. Align it to the left and align it to the top. There we go. We have our black background. The black background, however, is a bit too dark. You can see it doesn't really look three-dimensional, number 1. But number 2, our shadow completely disappears. That's not particularly a good thing. So here's what we want to do. Keep it selected, and we want to go to the gradient panel and just click on the gradient. And that doesn't look very much better. No. So what we're going to do is choose the black to white gradient, plain linear black to white gradient from the swatches panel. I'm going to drag the white over a little bit like that, and I'm just going to click below the very far left edge to add a third stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 2 darkest grays on the 2 ends. You can see dark grays. It's not the black, it's the darkest gray. Then I'm going to use a pretty medium gray here for this white. Now to really contract the white and force it to get a little smaller, I'm going to use the little diamond shapes on top of the gradient slider. You can see. There we go. Move it over a little bit to make it to really contain that lighter gray a bit more. Now it really doesn't look very three-dimensional yet, so what I want to do is just rotate this. Let's try 90 degrees. There we go. Now let's say I had decided to go with negative 90 degrees instead of 90 degrees, and our floor line looks like it's way higher. I don't want that. I want the floor line to be much lower. Well, with CS4 there's this new reverse gradient button. You can just hit that. Voila, we've just reversed it. So very nice. There we go. Our floor line looks nice and where it's supposed to be. Now I can lock up the background layer. Don't have to worry about messing that up accidentally. Unlock the box layer. Whoop, we don't want to do that. We actually want to select the whole layer and just drag it down a little bit lower to really place it nicely within the body of the floor. Next up, come inside of this layer, and I'm going to find the bottom piece of the box. If you recall when we created the box, we just deleted the top, we saved the bottom, and I mentioned that we were saving it. Here it is. We're saving it because we're going to use it for a shadow. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. What I want to do is select this guy, hit the V key, which is my move tool / my selection tool. I'm going to hit shift and the right arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times, and then nudge this up until it meets up so it looks like a shadow coming right off the back of the box, like so. I'm just going to fill this with black. We're going to apply a slight Gaussian blur to it, effect Gaussian blur. Note, real quick, before I go any further, I'd use the Gaussian blur here, not apply Gaussian blur, because I don't want it to be 8 or 9 pixels. I want to go Gaussian blur and say 1.5 pixels. Hit OK. It just slightly blurs it, and we want to select this guy, go to the transparency panel, reduce the opacity to something like 65, and we've got a nice, stronger shadow back there. Now we're going to create our reflection. Creating the reflection is super easy. It might be a little bit tricky for you, but it really is not too difficult. What we're going to do is grab this layer, click and drag and drop it on the new layer icon. It duplicates the layer. Wonderful. We're going to lock up the original layer 1. So click the lock area. Open up layer 1 copy by clicking the drop down arrow there. And I'm going to start selecting things I don't need. For starters, I don't need this black shadow here. I don't need this rear face of my box. I don't need this rear face of the box. Matter of fact, the only thing I need are the 2 front faces and this stroke. So I'm going to start deleting everything else, and the arrows, by the way. So there we go. I have everything except these, few things deleted. So what I'm going to do now is just shift this straight down until it's in position to be a reflection. I'm going to move it right up. So it's basically touching the box like so. Now you may notice here, well, let's just shift it over because it looks like it kind of got nudged 1 pixel to the right there. You may notice that these arrows are going the same direction, which, you want to talk about a bad reflection job. This would be a terrible reflection because, if you're really looking hard, you can see that this end of the arrow would be reflected onto the shiny floor, not the point all the way up here. So we really need to take care of that. Select this arrow first and go Object, Transform, Reflect. We're going to reflect along the vertical axis to start. Okay. And then we're going to go Object, Transform, Reflect along the horizontal axis. Hit OK, and there we go. We're going to do the same thing to the other arrow. Just select that guy. Object, Transform, Reflect. I like to do the vertical axis first. Hit OK. And Object, Transform, Reflect. And now the horizontal axis. OK. Wonderful. Now we can mask this entire group using a basically custom mask that we're going to create with the pen tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this whole thing, and I'm going to double click to apply a mask. You see, there we go. We have our mask. Great. I'm going to grab the pen tool, and I'm basically going to try to draw lines that mimic the lines at the bottom of the box to keep that perspective happening. So I'm going to click out there, click there, and click all the way over there. Didn't quite get that the way I like it, so I'm going to hit the A key, which is the path selection or direct selection tool. I'm going to stretch it out kind of like that. Go back to my pen tool, select that point that I had just started working on, and I'm just going to loop up and over this entire thing. Note it doesn't look like anything's happening. That is because this mask we're drawing is still filled with black. I want to fill it with a black to white gradient. Choose the black to white gradient. Grab the gradient tool. We're going to start at the bottom and just pull it straight up like so. And you can see it's going the wrong way, so I just used the reverse gradient button, and there we go. We have our gradient. I, however, do not quite like it where it is, so I'm going to back it up a little bit like so. There we go. That's nice. And I can deselect the mask, go to my transparency panel, select that thumbnail to get back to the initial or the editable layer area, the main layers, out of the opacity mask. And I basically just want to reduce the opacity of this layer. Ooh, let's try 50 for starters. And you know what? That actually looks pretty good. I'm going to leave it at 50. I'm going to zoom out, and you can see we have a nice box sitting on what appears to be a glass floor. Before we go, I'm going to show you how to put something inside of this box. It is super easy. What I'm going to do is unlock layer 1, and I'm just going to select it. we're going to grab the ellipse tool, and we're just going to draw an ellipse. Okay, so here's basically, this is going to be my glow. I need to blur it. Don't worry, I know it looks very scary right now, but we're going to fix that in a moment. I'm going to fill it with white. My glow, you know what, actually I'm not going to fill it with white. I'm going to fill it with, let's try yellow. Why not? Let's go crazy. If it looks really terrible, well, you'll know not to use yellow for your glows. I'm going to go Effect, Gaussian, Blur, and I'm going to blur this. Let's try 18. We're going to go nuts with it. Really blur it like that. Next, I'm going to drag this path beneath the two front faces, and I can see that this is one of my front faces in my layers panel, and this is one of my front faces. So what I can really do is just select this guy and go Object, Arrange, Send Backward. You can see it's Control Bracket. So I'm going to do that. We're going to hit Control, on the Mac that'd be Command, Control Bracket, it sends it behind one. No, it's still not behind the front. Ooh, there, it's behind one of the front faces now. Let's go back another one, and there we go. It's behind the front faces, but still in front of the rear faces. I'm going to now select this and choose Overlay as my blend mode, and you can see it almost looks like a fire is coming out of the box. So there we go. We've just finished our Web 2.0 styled icon, artwork, whatever you want to call it, fully vector. That's the part I like. Fully vector box in Adobe Illustrator. That's how you do it, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you loved it, and if you got some time, go check out the site. That's www.tutvid.com for more great video tutorials. Once again, thank you very much for watching.